What's up, guys? It is Modern Craftsman Monday. This week, it's Tyler and I hanging out. He's doing a Q&A with me. I'm doing a Q&A with him. But if you guys are wondering why Paulie hangs out on the job site every day, you're going to have to stay tuned and listen because Tyler answers that question. And he makes me want to bring Gus back to my job sites.
It's true. I think that we took a different approach to this podcast, which I kind of want to integrate into future podcasts where we're not necessarily digging into past and how you got into the industry. I want to touch on that, but we kind of just get into basic questions that we have as far as business and why you do certain things. And I think that in a personal case-by-case basis, it'll be a really good perspective for the podcast.
So stay tuned. Let us know what you think.
Thank you.
Dude, so it's really weird that you text me saying you wanted to talk about company vehicles. Because I was literally sitting here talking to Ken about company vehicles. I was talking to my CFO about company vehicles. And I was talking to Doug about company vehicles. And it's like... Well, like Doug drives a lot.
Yeah.
So we, this is a problem I have in general is I make casual conversation about this stuff and, fully intending to do something about it. And then obviously time goes by and it's like, hey, I know it's, probably not top priority, but, what's going on with the company vehicle thing. And because I had said to Doug, I was like, maybe like NS Builders would buy his Subaru and own it, and that way it could be commercial and it could be lettered, and commercial helps with parking in Boston, and then it would be our vehicle and he wouldn't have to worry about it. But
so are you like, what's that conversation like? Are you looking at numbers? Are you like bringing him in to see if it's something he'd rather do? Like what are you kind of weighing out?
Whatever, like I don't know. More kind of what makes sense. Do I need another company vehicle? Does it really make sense to do that and add it to my insurance? So I talked to my insurance company, and because I was Mike, who's like my acting CFO, not Mike Hume, with the consulting service I work with. I had asked him about it, and he's like, we really need to talk to your insurance company because, if they're driving their personal vehicle for work, you need to make sure that they're covered for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally threw my hands up. I'm like, what? Like that? I'd never even thought of like that. That wasn't even something I ever considered. But I had reached out to them then, and they had said, yeah, that's on your policy. He's like, that's part of your policy is that like outside vehicles are also covered. So God forbid there was an issue and they were in their own vehicle on work time, it's covered. So at this point, I think it makes more sense to just figure out some sort of stipend. Yeah. Because, I think about what John said in a previous episode about lettering the trucks. And meanwhile, like I want to letter my truck. I want Nick Yost's truck and Mike's truck to all be lettered. They're company trucks. Yeah. But it's like, does Doug really need to have a lettered Subaru? I guess that's cool. Like, it's good to have the branding, but that's his personal car, and he drives it for personal use.
Yep.
Where, Nick and Mike, I mean, they're probably driving it for personal use, but I would say far less. And anytime it's like, like Nick went away a couple weeks ago, and he called. He's like, hey, I'm going to, me and Brittany are going away. Can I take the truck to Maine or something?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, sure. Like that I was glad he asked, but I would never say no.
Yeah. Like I feel like it's definitely respectful to ask. And there's a lot to that because it's not just fuel costs, which like, I'm sure that he would probably just be putting that on his own dime, but then there's maintenance, tires, everything else that over the duration is all on you.
Right.
Which I guess, I kind of wanted to bring this up because I think a lot of people are on the fence. Do I get a company vehicle? Do I give an employee a stipend? and like kind of what goes into that and what's driving those decisions and the actual real life costs of them. Which I think that kind of quantifying those costs isn't that difficult if you figure out what the vehicle is, what your monthly payment is, what your insurance would be. But there's a lot of underlying reasons, whether it's the branding or being seen. Mm-hmm. And then you have the costs of maintenance, and then you have the liability with a company vehicle.
And that's,
I think that
good.
There's a lot that goes into it more than just, can I afford this monthly payment?
Right.
Which I think I did that when I bought my second van, was like, can I afford this monthly payment? When in retrospect, I don't think that should have been the determining factor for me.
You mean with Steve, like the second van?
Yeah, like for my setup and the way that we do business. So my thing was, I wanted, if we were on a job, I wanted to have a cohesive look. I wanted to have my van and anyone who's working for me to have a letter vehicle on the job, because I think that, and I felt that was very important. And then my second consideration was the monthly payment, where I didn't really consider, I guess, the way that I was set up and the way that I've been set up since then, kind of trying to find a fit for an employee, that I don't necessarily need a van fit out with a second set of tools all the time, because I have every tool that we would need in my van. And unless I had somebody running a separate job or doing a lot of work on their own, it doesn't really make sense, because when you look, obviously you have write-offs and everything else, but when you look at the cost of fuel, maintenance, insurance, and the payment on that, I was probably in the range of, I think my payment, I maybe put like $6,000 down, and then my payment was $550 a month, because I bought a new van, and then insurance is like $2,000 a year. So figure $200, that's $750. And then a couple $100 between fuel for the month, $850, $950, and then maintenance, call it $1,000 a month. Is it worth $12,000 a year to have a van for somebody who's on the job 90% of the time with me?
Right.
In order to kind of keep that image and keep that brand, or do my customers not really care about that? Because in your situation where you have a lot of people and you have an overhead, that $12,000 can kind of get lost in the mix. But when you're a small outfit like myself, an additional $12,000 in overhead is a bigger pill to swallow, just because I don't, I run my business based on a very low overhead.
Right. I mean, but the other side of that, it's for us, we have 7 vehicles.
Yeah.
So let's exclude mine, right? Because I need a vehicle no matter what. So 6 vehicles. So that's $72,000 if you figure the $12,000 or $1,000 a month, right? That's a lot of money.
Adds up very quickly,
right? And it's a big part. Like early on, the vans, it was because of the brand image, and then it was then we didn't Nick and Mike became more project management, and they didn't really need the vans, and we were having issues where the lead carpenter needed the van. So then it was like, I don't really want the guy that's in charge of the job showing up in a unmarked truck. So it makes sense to have this cohesiveness. But then now it's, now Doug, who will be listening to this podcast, like this is a very real conversation. It's, it's not that I don't want him to have a branded car. I guess I have to have actually, I should have the conversation with him. It's like, does he want a branded car?
Yeah.
And, because, like, does he want... He had the thing wrapped when it was Puffin Media.
Yeah.
But did he like that? And I know he's all in on what we're doing and, a big, and excited about it. But when he wants to go up to Maine, does he want to be driving down the highway with, plastered lettering all over it?
Yeah, and is it really necessary? But
I don't think no, I don't think it's necessary. Like, not.
but even just looking at it from, what if, for me, what if I, instead of paying $1,000 a month and sort out what sort of tax incentives I have for having that vehicle, what if I were to give them a fuel stipend and then also either give them a raise
Mm-hmm.
or give them an additional $50 a month toward, or a phone or something like that, that were more beneficial to them than the vehicle. Um, like, I never even had that conversation with anyone because it was almost like what I wanted for my company and for my image and everything else. And looking back on it, like, did that make the most amount of sense? Would it have made more sense to be like, hey, you need more of a work vehicle than you have? Are you looking to get a new vehicle? Like, if you are, how about I put money towards that? Um, Working out something along that line, so then, like, it's not all on me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also am like getting the utility out of it if need be. They're getting a new car, they're getting a stipend for it. Like, a lot of companies do that, a lot of bigger companies. Both of my brothers have that, where they pay for like miles or fuel and maintenance on their cars. And
What about insurance?
uh, I guess I don't know if they pay all of their insurance, but I would imagine that.
It's probably
I don't
lumped
know.
into the vehicle stipend. I remember, when I worked for um, the contractor before, it was just a number. It was like
Yeah.
$300 a month.
Yeah,
And
so I'm sure basically they have that personal vehicle. They're going to be paying insurance regardless. If their insurance rate were to be raised because of what you were doing, obviously compensate them for that. But then I also think you're now using their vehicle. There has to be something in it more than just covering their costs,
mm-hmm.
because then it's not worth it for
Right.
them. But yeah, I think there's a lot of instances, and I think that my situation would have been a great situation for me to say, hey, let's get you an auto stipend rather than buy you a new van. Because when I look at the numbers and look at what I was trying to achieve and my actual need for that, more than, like, this is what I want to do. I want to have a van. I want everything to be lettered. At the end of the day, I don't know if that really makes a difference or made a difference for me.
Where's the van now?
Outside, sitting.
Yeah,
which is
you're not using it, right?
So like I've been hopping into Philly some. I'll use it then. Like, it's not really getting used. There's no tools in it. It's if I need something to get in somewhere or transport something that my big truck doesn't fit. Honestly, it's probably something that I want to unload at this point because it's new. For it to sit is the worst thing for it.
Right.
And I was kind of hung up on like the amount of money that I spent on it. But at this point, whoever is going to need something down the road, I'm not ready to be putting somebody in a fully outfitted van right now. And anyone I bring on, I probably wouldn't be ready to do that in the next year. So then I look at, $12,000 this year. I'm so hung up, I'm going to lose 10 grand. I'm going to lose 15 grand on the van, but is that worth hanging on to it for another year to save 12?
Right.
So that's a tough decision, especially, again, you're losing value on it. It's sitting. Do you really need it? Do you need the liability? Do you need it on your insurance?
Well, I guess so we have 2 vans right now at the shop, and they don't necessarily sit, but one of them tends to be here. And the consideration, one consideration, you said that you use it to, deliver things or go into Philly, right? So how often is that happening? And if you continue to do it and you don't have that van, what would you be doing?
Yeah, so I still have a pickup truck that's technically my personal vehicle. But I also use it for work. Like, it's registered commercial, it's lettered, it's if I were not driving my box truck or my wife's car, I drive my pickup truck. So realistically, I could get stuff in and out of the city in my pickup truck. And is it worth, again, $12,000 a year? Like if I really needed something, could I rent something? And sure, there's a hassle that goes along with it.
Well, that's exactly what I was getting at, is for us, we consider just, continue rent as necessary. But the amount of times that we would rent offsets the payment.
Sure. So then that's a no-brainer for you. I think, a lot of people are looking to make that upgrade or to try and grow. And I would encourage people to kind of look into the options, like John's always saying, why take on that expense? Why take on that liability? If it's going to help your business, I think that's do it. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of advantages to it, but I think that if you're doing it either to like create an image or grow your brand, you have to weigh the cost of that, the advertising, that's now a mobile billboard or whatever you want to call it. Does that make sense? Are you going to get a return on that? Like for me in my small company, being that my van's parked on the job every single day, regardless if I'm there or not, somebody's grabbing my van and taking it there. I could put $12,000 a year towards something else. Sure. Even if I was putting it towards an employee's new vehicle or just a stipend for them that I think would be better suited.
Yeah.
And that's not something that I learned until I made that decision. And sure, things could have happened differently, everything else, but looking back on it, like maybe that's the first step rather than going all in.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right with the branding thing. It's like, it's a good reason to do it, but you do have to consider everything else.
Yeah. And like, I want to be like a premier remodeler, and I want to be known for our little niche brand and everything else. But then I drive around these towns where it's these super high-end GCs and they're subcontracting most of their work out. And it's like unlettered cars, unlettered vans, helpers for the subs that they have there. And I'm thinking to myself, what am I really worrying about?
It's funny because I show up on the job and it's usually one van, the truck, and then two of the guys drive their personal vehicle. And I'm like, I wonder if I could just buy like the old C10. I mean, the old S10. Just buy a bunch of white S10 pickups and letter them, so everything's the same.
Yeah, but it's
at this like it would only be to satisfy me.
Exactly, and like, and that's so now you have your electrician on the job who drives a lettered van,
right? But
his helper doesn't drive a lettered van,
right?
So now it's like are you going to buy a van for your electrician?
We should collect white S10s.
They're probably pretty cheap now.
Or the new Colorados or something.
Yeah, but that was a hang up for me. I wanted that, and I even spoke to Ryan at Kukin, and he's like, why? Where I am, I'll drive around these neighborhoods and it's never like that. Like it's good to have that brand. It's good to have that image, and your truck's going to be there every day. Mm-hmm. But like, I don't think an employee driving a personal car versus you having, for me, is worth the $12,000. Am I going to get a return on that? Just because the way that my business operates is very low volume, and like low overhead and everything else. So for me, that's a big number in the grand scheme of things that I believe could be put elsewhere to either make more money, make people happier, rather than just like fulfill this need for me to be like, hey, I have a company van and I have my own truck and we're all branded when you walk onto the job site. It's, it's not a t-shirt that I'm buying for somebody.
Yeah.
It's $1,000 a month payment. And in my situation, I don't think that it necessarily makes sense until I get to the point where somebody's on jobs by themselves without me on a consistent basis.
Right. And I think that's where I'm at with kind of, in Doug's role, he's bouncing around. I think it's a conversation I need to have with him, whether he wants a branded vehicle or not. But I think for him, it's, if he's getting covered, if the compensation is covering his cost plus some, then like that's, that's good for him. That's good for me.
Yeah, for sure.
And then it's not, we don't have this liability. There's no new purchase of a vehicle. If he wants to go buy a new vehicle, great. it's, and I think it does make more sense. But I'm curious, I'm curious to see what his thoughts are as far as, again, driving around a branded vehicle all the time.
Yeah. But I mean, I kind of wanted to touch on that because it's something I've thought about for a long time. And then I know that.
Well, you're in a position now. You have two vans sitting. I mean, a van sitting. So it's
I have a lettered pickup truck. So if I'm that concerned with somebody like having an image on, so I drive in my driveway and I have 3 lettered vehicles for myself.
Right.
It just doesn't make that much sense. So that's kind of where I stand and where I'm headed. But I was curious as to what that looks like on your end, because I know that you have bought more vehicles and you're probably in the position where you could go in either direction. I think that it's going to be a case by case basis.
It's interesting
too. I think that a lot of people are in that same boat.
Yeah. I mean, I look at Ken, right? Ken is technically, I would classify him as a project manager under, his role is director of millwork, but it's essentially a project manager for the millwork side of it. And he is, oftentimes hopping in his personal car, going to the job sites, and it's like bouncing around, and he does, that's, I'm hung up on that one where it's like, does he need a company vehicle, or is the stipend, sufficient? It's tough. It's extremely tough. And even the guys that do the installs for the cabinetry, it's like those guys come to the shop and they're packing up and they're going to the job. It probably doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But is that long term, or do things change? Do we adapt the way we do things and we're not coming to the shop every morning? I don't think that's realistic because, number one, we don't want stuff sitting in a van overnight, whether it's cold, whether it's hot. It's, they usually come here and then they split. The guys in the field, that's different. They're going directly to a job site.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that I'm thinking about constantly, which drives me crazy.
Also, I don't think that our industry, I think that there's very big companies who have the company vehicles and the fleet and everything else that it makes sense for them. But I feel like a lot of smaller ranged companies, it's always been that people drive their cars to work, or somebody who wants to get into it's like, I'm going to buy a pickup so that I can
I'm going to contest that. Suffolk Construction, Moriarty Construction, Avalon Bay, who, has the construction division. These are all Suffolk and Moriarty are big GCs in Boston. Avalon Bay is a giant developer in the U.S. Not one branded vehicle.
Really?
Yeah, everyone just got a stipend,
which makes sense.
Everyone, I mean, and we're talking billions of dollars of and they're doing development. I got a stipend. Everyone just drove their car to work and got a stipend for it.
So I guess even what I'm thinking as well would be a lot of HVAC companies who are bigger outfits because they have people in the field with tools.
That's what I was going to get at. It's like, I'm talking from a GC standpoint, but now then you go down to the trades, different. Now every site work guy is driving a branded vehicle because it has equipment on it, but they're picking up, their helper, or their helper is getting a ride there, and, parking not, typically off site. So when you get into the trade specific stuff, that's when you start seeing the branding again.
Yeah. I think of a lot of smaller companies, and most of them have, 1 or 2 company vehicles, which they put a guy or 2 guys in, and then a lot of them it's meeting helpers on the job.
Right.
There's a lot of reasons behind that, but that's kind of where I stand.
No, it's fair. It's fair. It's a very real thing that we're talking about. So it's funny that you brought it up as we're sitting here live talking about it.
Yeah. So for everyone that's listening, John had a crazy week this week, and we're trying to make it work, but it was, I feel like, stressing him. So we kind of want to just take this week and keep moving with the podcast to pump something out. So Nick and I are just on here, and we're discussing what are we going to talk about. And I kind of came up with a few things that I wanted to touch on. And and see what happens. But it's basically going to be just some pinch points and then some questions that I have, and then I guess just kind of engaging with Nick at that point. So next up on my list, let me pull my list out. So when I came up for Cape Cod Lumber, we went to one Christmas party, I don't know, and we went to your finisher's Christmas party.
We did.
And the Jeremy Conningham has a shop down this way, and he does finishing in-house, and it's all waterborne finishing, water-based coatings because of fire standards, fire regulations, combustibles, all of that stuff. And I'm starting to think about the amount of money that would go into putting your finishing in-house, like space, equipment, insurance, and you don't do that. I think there's a lot of reasons. Your space is limited in your shop right now.
Yeah.
But you're basically building cabinets or assembling cabinets, then to disassemble them for finishing and then reassemble, or possibly just sending the parts out to get finished, then assembling. I'm sure it's a mix of all of that, but kind of what you're doing now, what that looks like, and then where you'd like to be with all of that. If pulling finishing in-house makes sense to you.
Well, before we get into that, you mentioned combustibles on as one of the big reasons why people spray waterborne.
Yeah.
So interestingly enough, I looked at a project this morning, and he called me yesterday and said, we had a fire, so we need you to look at repairing it. And normally we don't do insurance work, but the conversation kind of continued, and they talked about, well, we had a fire, but we're going to take advantage of the situation and remodel the house. We just need to understand what the fire, like how much damage did the fire cause.
Yeah.
So I got there, and we're downstairs, and we're looking, and I don't smell smoke, nor do I see a fire. And I said, well, what was the cause of the fire? And he's like, come upstairs. So we go upstairs, and we're in the back room, and now I smell smoke, and the whole room's burnt.
Yeah.
And I'm looking around, I'm like, was it someone had something in the fireplace? And he had a can of spray paint sitting on top of the mantle. And he's like, that caused the fire. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, explain. Like, he's like, they don't really know. And the painter got pretty badly burned, so he went right to the hospital. And I don't know the whole story.
Yeah.
But nor did he. But the understanding is that he sealed that room off, like entirely sealed that room off. I'm gonna make the assumption he didn't have negative air or fans or anything, and which I'll touch on in a second. But he had an air compressor in there, and they think the understanding is that the compressor kicked on and something maybe sparked and exploded in that room.
That's crazy.
Like what? So I was like, do you mind if I take photos of this? He's like, go ahead. I'm like, I'm going to use this as like a learning opportunity for everyone. Like this is, I'm going to send this to my painter and just be like, hey, listen, this happened. Like I'm not sure if you know about it. And Graham called me. He was like, yeah, dude, like, he told me a story of another one of his friends that had similar fires. And he mentioned something that was interesting to me, is that all the fans that they use, all the air scrubbers, all the negative air machines are explosion proof.
Yeah.
And that's I'm dead honest, that's the first time I've ever heard that word or that term. And do you know, like, I had called the team. I was like, we need to find out if these build cleans are explosion proof.
I don't know if they are.
And this isn't, we're going to do our research and find out, but
yeah,
it was just, I've never thought of that. And to think that this guy's just using this, it was like Kill's spray primer.
Yeah.
And he was probably priming something, just doing his job, and the compressor had this heat source, and the thing exploded. And not only did he get burned, but they had just moved into the house a year prior, or less than a year, and they were finally like starting to do the home improvement projects.
Yeah.
And now they're moved out.
Yeah, I don't know if the build cleans would be, because realistically they're not for odor.
Right.
They are for particulates in the air. So like I don't think that they would have to be.
And I'll be the first one to admit, like, we use it for when we're painting.
Yeah.
It's like, so it's that's a real thing, and I wanted to talk about it because that I would have never thought that would have been what caused a fire.
Yeah,
and for it to explode.
It's crazy. I mean, something could have arced. It could have been something with his compressor that had like a short somewhere.
Anything.
Yeah. It could be like humidity outside where the gases aren't able to kind of raise or dissipate the way that there's usually do, which is super scary. But yeah, any of that stuff, like the fans and all that, are supposed to be explosion proof. But I try, because we're doing remodels, we're in people's homes. So it's not often that we're using a solvent based finish in somebody's house. I think that the extent of it would be a shellac based primer to kind of cover or hide something or seal raw wood.
Yep.
And shellac, I feel like with the primer, does dissipate fairly quickly, but it does stink. It's a solvent, but it's not like an oil that's going to stink and kind of hang around for 24 hours or so.
Yeah, shellac, basically, the smell goes away once it's dry.
Yeah, and it's very, very quick curing, so like a shellac, I think that it's like denatured alcohol based. You could thin it with denatured alcohol, which basically, if you were to leave it out, would evaporate into the air. But shellac based finishes cure very quickly. Oil doesn't cure very quickly. That's why oil based finishes are nice, because they're slow curing and they level out lacquers and all of that stuff as well. So usually if we do anything that is solvent based, it would be a shellac based finish. But then even think like hardwood floors where you're using an oil poly.
Yeah.
Which, and you finish oil floors and they stink for how long, but there's gotta be more in a room if you were to finish it with oil poly than a can of spray paint.
Right. Which is
stuff stinks for like, I feel like a week.
It's frightening.
Yeah, like if you have an arc or a short and a switch or something like that, and the room's sealed off to kind of keep everything in there.
Yeah. Well, I'm relating this back to the comment about water-based finish and why these booths are so expensive when you start spraying solvent-based products.
Yeah.
Because of the fire suppression systems necessary. I mean, I think Ken told you when we were at that Christmas party, they had that booth that I think they had it set up as a potato bar at the time.
Yeah.
But James had went there to pick up a project one day, and the booth looked like it was filled with, it looked like a foam party. It was filled with foam.
Yeah.
I want to say it was purple. I might be making that up. But James kind of laughed and was like, what's going on? And someone had tripped the fire suppression. And it filled the booth with foam to put out a potential fire.
Yeah.
So the question, your question of why do we sub it out and why don't we bring it in house, and there's a handful of reasons. Obviously, number one, we're in a small shop, so we don't have the space for it. I think the number two reason is we don't have the person for it, and it's that's a hard person to hire because I'm not a finisher.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, it was like when I hired a bookkeeper. It's like, I'm not a good bookkeeper, so I don't know how to hire a good bookkeeper.
Like, how are you interviewing them?
Right.
What questions do you ask when you don't know anything about it?
When I can hire a project manager or a carpenter or a cabinet maker because I've done that. But it's like when I don't know anything about it, it's very hard. So, we're basically meeting with guys that own finish shops and seeing the level of product. And I'm, Ken and I are, we're very honest and upfront about our feelings on finish. So if we see discrepancies or see issues with it, we question it. It's like, hey, these are the things we've dealt with. How do we resolve this? Or, what's the reasoning for this, or what's the reasoning for using this product, and things like that. So number two is we just don't have someone to do it. I've never interviewed a finisher. We've probably had one, maybe two people reach out to us in efforts to come be a finisher for us.
Mm-hmm.
But then it goes back to the number one of we don't have the space or the booth or the plan right now to buy one. So, but it's extremely hard because we're working at the mercy of, essentially a sub, a finisher, and their schedule, and they're finishing for multiple people, and it's usually we're usually dealing with 4-week turnaround. So the more accurate we can be with pre-planning, meaning, hey, we're going to be dropping off on the 1st, so we can pick up, February 1st, we can pick up on March 1st. We need to really be good about hitting our targets and tracking their targets.
So there's more than just a financial component to this equation for you, because
it would be less expensive, to do it in-house.
It'd be less expensive to do it in-house.
Yes, I think so.
But
long term.
Yeah, but you're also having to weigh missed opportunity costs, paying employees to pack up, deliver, pick back up, assemble, reassemble, label parts,
lose parts.
Make sure that everything's there when they drop it off, when they pick it up.
Scratch a filler on site, send it back, wait 4 weeks. It's it's not, when we're not controlling it, it's why we brought cabinetry in. House. We wanted to control it. So, the goal is to bring it in-house. The goal is to have that under our umbrella. But we just don't have any, there's no plan for that right now.
And you don't have the space right now. So you would have to basically, even if you rented another shop, you would then still be packing up, delivering, tracking parts, all the stuff that you're dealing with. You'd have better control of schedule. You wouldn't have the cost of
I think
actually
when we
paying
move,
someone to do the work, but you'd be paying an employee.
Yeah, I think when we move eventually, our location, we would be moving to a location that could support a booth. And
that makes perfect sense. I think you're probably at the point now where to make that move just doesn't make sense to bring it in-house. You'd have to rent a new shop, or you'd have to move shops. You'd have to bring somebody in, train somebody, which I think, that's a big jump, even though you're kind of jumping through hoops right now to get your finishing done, just because of the way that you're set up and everything else. But I think that a lot of people look at finishing in-house, not like I would even see finishing in-house, like most people's business decisions are based on that financial component, where it's almost finishing in-house is just so much more convenient,
right?
That it's almost like you would pay more money to finish in-house because of the convenience factor, and because everything under one roof, and you can get answers and you can do touch-ups, and
the convenience is the biggest burden. It's absolutely the biggest burden right now, is that we can't control the schedule, and when stuff, when stuff does go wrong, or we need to change a color, or we need to do samples, there's just always a wait.
Yeah, so like even my cabinet company that I'm a dealer for, if I want to get cabinet finishes for people other than stock colors, it could easily be 4 weeks. Like if I want to get a door made and then get it finished, it could be 6 weeks. It could be as much as getting a kitchen's worth of cabinets, because they're still ordering, like whether they're ordering one door, and they can kind of bump it up and make it happen a little faster. But if they're ordering one door or 20 doors or 100 doors, it's still the same thing. So it's a hassle. Like if you had the ability to produce doors and finish them for customers and not have to depend on somebody else, like you guys are making the doors.
Look at Tony from Bespoke.
Yeah.
I mean, he's doing samples left and right.
Yep.
And something comes in and it's like, it's got to be finished. He's got the shop right there. The professor, he calls him.
Yeah, there's just so much to finishing.
Well, that's the other part of it. It's like, all right, now we have the space. Now we have the money. Now we have the person. is that person delivering at an equal or better level than we're getting?
Yeah, and you can screw up a lot of stuff very quickly.
Right. I think my biggest, going back to the water-based comment, that's a technology that seems to be lacking, especially here in the States, from my little knowledge of finishing, right? Thomas May over in the UK, Thomas May Bespoke on Instagram, he's got a shop, an amazing shop. If you guys aren't following him, you should be looking at his stuff. He spends the money aside, he's just got every piece of Martin equipment. It's absolute pure gold. But his shop, he sprays Cerelac, which I believe is a Sherwin-Williams product. I could be wrong.
It sounds like it would be. I feel like a lot of their stuff.
They bought. It's another company that they acquired, and I started picking his brain. I'm like, I like the fact that it's water based, and the biggest thing that we see over here is that the durability isn't there. The hardness isn't there. There's issues with it, and he straight up said, he was like, listen, I would put this up against any of the solvent-based finishes, like from durability standpoint.
And he's done both.
He said, however, the application is much more finicky.
Oh yeah.
So he's like, my booth has to be within a very specific temperature range, humidity range. It's very, very specific, and it's that's the caveat of spraying water-based, but your risk is down.
Yeah, so I learned by starting with water-based because like the solvents, I was never set up for it. It always kind of scared me. And for what we use and what we do and our customer base, so we get a good finish doing what we're doing. I think like, would I rather a shop lacquer or a shop conversion varnish? Yes, but that's not an option for a lot of our jobs that are getting finished in place in an occupied home. Mm-hmm. And we've tried it, and there's a lot of different products out there, and there's certain products that are better than others, and there's certain products that you use in certain situations. They all have their issues. Site finishing with like a lacquer, you can get a good finish, but then you have contaminants in the air settling in it because it's so slow curing. Like a conversion varnish is going to be very similar to a water base, that it's curing super quickly. So you can get a lot of blowback that's going into a finish that's not fully cured, that's going to feel rough and textured afterwards, that you either have to buff out or sand and re-top coat. So there's a lot of things that are difficult with it, but like with a water base, it's very finicky with moisture because it's water based. Like a solvent is not going to mix with water, so the moisture and the humidity in the air isn't going to affect it as much as a water base that's relying on air to cure. It's not chemically curing, and there are cross linkers that you can put in to harden them or help with chemical abrasion and chemical resistance, but you're needing a perfect environment for that finish to stay wet long enough to level, but not stay wet long enough that it's going to run, sag, or have contaminants get into it. So then you run into, there's a lot of issues with that. Spraying flat, spraying vertical surfaces inside cubbies and everything else. And I don't think the technology is there yet for most people. I think that it takes a lot more work to get that level of finish with the water base. Like lacquer, you can spray a few wet coats on in a shop scenario and let it cure, and it's going to be like glass. With the water, that's just not the case. There's a lot more going, and even just getting to that finish stage with water is super tough because now you're putting water on wood that's going to just swell it and raised grain and everything else.
Yeah, it's that. Like I said, I don't have enough knowledge on it, but it's interesting to me, and even from a health standpoint, everything has turned to health. My thoughts on spray foam, my thoughts on manufacturing quartz countertops. There's, all of these things and all these products that we use that, people are starting to question.
Rachel just got a veggie burger to cook at home the other night when she wanted like burger night at home. It's like a plant-based burger. I eat a burger, and then she's like, it's actually really good. Like, I wouldn't know the difference. Taste it. And I taste it after just eating a delicious burger. And I was like, it doesn't tast like a cheeseburger.
Was it a Beyond Burger?
I don't know what brand it was. So, it could be.
So we're starting this podcast late tonight because I was eating a veggie burger before you got on.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
I don't think it's a substitute. Like, that's one of those things that's very tough to be a substitute.
And I don't eat it as a substitute. I eat it. I thought it tastes good.
Yeah,
it's like a black bean burger.
Yeah,
right.
So I don't think that hers was a black bean burger. I'm pretty sure it's like plant based.
Yeah.
And it's multiple different plants, but it's funny, like everything is shifting towards health and everything else.
But every product that people are using, they're questioning. The health concerns in the environment that we live in is being questioned. In technology, like the Foodbot thing, it's like these things are these technologies and these products are coming out to show you how unhealthy everything is around you, and finish is a huge thing. It's the off-gassing. It's like you have this you bring. We've brought cabinets into the shop, and it's like that stuff stinks. We can't we can't bring that to a house. How long is that going to take? And not only that, but is it safe right now? Like, is the off-gassing safe? It's very interesting that that's why I think that I would say that's number 3 reason why I haven't brought it in-house, is because I would like to understand and perfect a healthier choice to finishing rather than going to the more traditional. And if that's water-based, my understanding is that if you're going to set up for water-based, that's what you're going to spray, and you're not going to spray solvent.
Yeah.
It's really like one or the other. And
so there's a lot of advantages to spraying a water-based: insurances, fire suppression, health.
Do you remember when we toured Marvin? Remember the people spraying the windows?
Yep.
And no respirator. I don't think. That was wild to me that they didn't have respirators on.
I mean, they do that like where Rachel goes. So my wife works for anthropology. She's now at Urban, but she's in like product development for furniture. And she goes down there and they're finishing furniture with solvent-based finishes in these massive fans and they're just like spraying on a table, no respirator, anything.
To Marvin's credit, it was water-based and it was considered 100% healthy.
Yeah. But even if you think of cleaning equipment, so like I found a good water-based primer for a lot of our works, remodel work. We're in old homes. If you paint over old oil or latex, oil that's been latexed over and not properly bonded with a high quality primer just peels off, so if you don't like degloss it and then or sand it and then put a high quality primer, which like shellac used to be my go-to, but I don't want to be spraying that in home, so then I'm brushing it on and then sanding it back. So like I found a decent primer that I can spray, but cleaning a pump with lacquer thinner or denatured alcohol or mineral spirits versus water, like you're sitting there with a 5-gallon bucket and water or whatever solvent and you're just blasting it into a 5-gallon bucket while it's spraying all over. And then how many guys are realistically taking that and just dumping it somewhere like behind a bush, to go into the ground and everything else. Like, that happens.
Right.
I mean, if I clean a brush in my own property, like, and it's in a small container, like I dump most of it back in because the paint will settle out of it and reuse it. But if there's some towards the end, like I throw it in my driveway because I have a gravel driveway. Like that's really not good to do. Like I have a well that
right.
we're drinking water from, but like it's my own house and I don't really even think about it.
Right.
So there's a ton of health benefits. You're supposed to recycle it. So like there's township days. For us, I don't know. I mean, I would assume if you're a contractor, like when we're your finisher, he sends his stuff out. They have accounts with people. So I'm sure that there's bigger companies. I know if you're a homeowner, you can recycle that stuff at like township days. They'll have, whether it's a few times a year or once a month, that you can take all of your old finishes and get them recycled. But you're definitely not supposed to throw it in your driveway or like behind a bush and somebody or like in their mulch bed or Cassandra.
I mean, you shouldn't be doing that with the water-based either, realistically.
No, but like if you were cleaning and you have like paint water,
right?
It's realistically at that point, like it's going into the ground, it's water. The paint isn't at that point going to be as harmful. But yeah, you probably shouldn't be dumping that stuff. But like, I don't know who doesn't dump their paint water or dump like a bucket of water from cleaning thin set. Mm-hmm. Could flush it down the toilet. Like I've done that as well, not thin set, but like paint when you're getting towards the end of it and just continually flush the trap and everything else that's going down the stack. But like, are you supposed to do that?
Right.
So I don't know, but I think that the industry's moving towards water-based finishes.
Well, look at the automotive industry.
Yeah.
They've switched to water-based.
Look at the floor industry, right? Like floor finishes, any oil poly that they can only sell in pints or like quarts or whatever it is. So you can't buy gallons of it. So people are buying pallets of this stuff and then opening up and putting it into bigger containers. So they're only allowed to ship so much. Or like Benjamin Moore Satin and Pervo was pulled off the product line for a while and now it's back out with apparently the same chemical makeup, but they just put that it's not for woodwork, it's only for metal, and that's how they like got a loophole in putting that product back out. But eventually they're gonna put a like the kibosh on all of that.
Sure.
And I think that it'll move towards water base. I don't know when that's going to happen, but like if you were looking to go that route, starting off in that direction would probably make more sense than switching.
Yeah, and that's I would say those are the three reasons. It's the space, it's the person, I guess the person, the training, because we're not finishers,
mm-hmm.
and then the product. And I think and I almost think the product is one of the biggest reasons as why we don't, because right now we use 2K poly because we found it to be flexible and durable and the best finish for what we've asked for, and we've tried. I mean, I want to say we've tried every other finish, but we've tried a lot, and Ken has tried a lot. He worked for another cabinet finisher, and it's just been the most consistent and best finish we can get. So that's what we're dealing with. And then I have a meeting with this guy that sells finishes, and he talks about how incredibly harmful 2K poly is. To health.
I'm sure.
And it's, and then I'm sitting like, where does that concern stop? Once it dries? Once it off-gasses? Does it ever? And that, immediately I go into this, all right, well, now we need to consider a new product.
But you won't have cracked rails and stiles anymore.
Hopefully not. Are you referring to my kitchen?
No, I like lacquer. I feel like no matter what you do at the connection of rail and stiles, even with like fasteners, it's hard, and I feel like it cracks no matter what. And it's hard to get away from that. But all right, so that's going to segue into how you guys when somebody comes to you for a kitchen, how are you guys pricing that? Because I know you've made some mistakes in the past. I know that you now have like a solid consistent group of guys in the shop that could probably help you. I know that you guys are probably have your hand in a lot of kitchen design and cabinet design, especially Ken, because he does things differently than most designers would and everything else. Like, how are you guys pricing kitchens? I know how I would price a kitchen out from like budget to final pricing, but you guys do very unique projects. How the hell are you coming up with numbers? Is it
it's
a component of time and material? Are you putting linear foot on stuff?
Time and material, and that's, we've looked at it a number of ways, and it's not as systematic as we'd like it to be. Right now I'm essentially, looked at a project the other day. It's a kitchen job, and there's no design yet, and they want to know how much it's going to cost. And I'm looking at the space, and I'm comparing it to other projects that we've done in my head, saying, all right, well, it's probably somewhere roughly around this much money. It was roughly 100. That particular one, I'm thinking it's probably going to be around $100,000 in cabinetry.
Yeah. And is that more of a gut feel for you based on what you've done before?
It's totally gut based on what we've done before, and considering what we've built, the size of it, and was it profitable. So I want it to be more systematic, and I think the more we do this, I would say the first year we were just building and figuring out our cost, but we weren't doing a very good job of tracking it. Where now Ken has, as his role has changed and evolved into more of like the director, he is doing a lot more record keeping of time.
Yeah.
But he's looking at a job and doing time, like basically figuring out time and material. And I mean, it probably takes him a couple hours, but he breaks that job down and he looks at the run and estimates the sheets of plywood and how much is getting, how many doors, obviously hardware, what's that finish cost going to be roughly. It's all based on history, and as we collect this data and track our time, the time tracking is mint.
And you guys are also installing at this point too, like you're not selling cabinets to other contractors, so you're having to try and put a number on what that installation of your crazy finish and adjustment of hinges and like all the stupid stuff that you guys do.
Yeah, but it's also, the selling point of why we're doing this as well is we're not marking it up more than what we're marking up more than our fee to do the job.
Yeah.
So it's treated as a time and material, a cost plus, which is unique, I think. I don't know many, typically you're buying cabinetry, you're marking it up, and then you're marking it up again.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how. I think that anything, like all of your jobs are basically one-off. And
that's
like
why we look at it.
You're building boxes, but there's so many little things that you guys are integrating into your jobs that, if you want to customize drawers and it's a big kitchen, that could add weeks to,
That's like all those. So the intentional design elements, as we call them, that a lot of times that evolves after.
Yeah.
So that's, like the utensil block that, we've done twice now. That we had to do work on figuring out what that was going to cost.
Mm-hmm.
And that thing cost $1,500.
Yeah.
And we did it for free on one job, and we did it at cost on the other one, because it was something we wanted to do. It was interesting, and we now we're looking at it. It's like, how do we fabricate that faster or more efficiently? Can we make it more universal? So we're not, we were taking people's silverware and mapping it out on the CNC. So in that case, it's like, yeah, that's super unique, and it's hard to price, but those are kind of really minor pieces of it, where the boxes are the boxes. We have, every piece we have, it's, we have a nomenclature of how we order these pieces. So every box has 5 pieces of plywood. You know, if maybe more, but traditionally 5 pieces of plywood, and they all have a code to them. So when we order those pieces, the codes are mapped in and they're cut. So we know we can basically say this is what we need. And Dovey, who runs all our CNC at Barney and Carey, he can say that's going to take 8 sheets of walnut, and we know what we're paying for walnut, and 8 sheets is going to take X amount of hours on the CNC. There's our box cost, and then we know that it's going to take a day for a guy to assemble all of them. So it's broken down by job because they are unique, but we're at the same time we're tracking it, and hopefully in the next few months we can kind of dissect that data and look at it and say, all right, this is where we're averaging linear foot cost for cabinetry.
Yeah,
and
which I think,
and that way, when I am walking a job, I can be more accurate with it. Because the gut check's fine, but I've been wrong. I've been wrong. I've been really wrong. I've felt bad before, thinking when I was super confident we were gonna hit a certain number, we price it, and I was like maybe less than half, and I just didn't consider some of the big picture items, and it came in, and I was like, I messed that up. Like, I messed that up bad.
Yeah.
And I look like an idiot. So it's like having that data and kind of dissecting it and putting together more of a process will also help eliminate me having to be the one that's coming up with those numbers. And that's been a big thing. It's like I don't want to have to be the guy that's always doing it.
Yeah, and I think that you have a consistent group of guys in place who should be able to help. I mean, I feel like more so you would be helping them create those systems, but it'd be more so them.
Well, Ken, right? Like Ken, if someone calls Ken and says, this is our drawing, can you do this job? He should be able to look at it and say, yep, and put a price to it.
Yep.
And that's what we're working towards. It's, that's the involvement of the cabinet shop. So it's not, again, to answer your question, it's not as structured as it should be. It's very much case by case, but with the intent to structure it.
Yeah. And the challenge there is that most of your projects are different. There's a lot of components and aspects of those jobs that are going to be on every job. But I think that when you get into the level of work that you're doing, and I know that what we do and working in the older homes and everything else, and our clients, they're spending a lot of money, but it's not like we're doing super high-end work. And I think that there's instances, and I'm sure you've done some crazy jobs where the finishes cost a whole lot of money. But I always feel like when you get into this detail-oriented work, the finishes aren't driving the cost of that job. It's the amount of time to basically create those details and make those details come to life. And there's just so much time involved. It's not happenstance. It's not luck. It's all pre-planning and then double checking, triple checking.
Well, it's like that pocket door we just did, the Hawa, retractable door for the coffee station.
Yeah.
People are like, commenting on how much it cost. And I want to say, and someone will correct me, I want to say it was probably $1,100 or $1,200 for that kit, where you could get another one for a couple $100 to do the to do a similar motion, just not as nice. But it's like, in the grand scheme of things, that's a small percentage of the job.
Exactly.
But the time that it took to install it, to understand how it worked, to make sure it worked properly, that's why that was expensive. Not because it cost $600 or $800 more than the other one. It was because of the time it took to actually understand what it took to put it in. And that's, to your point.
Exactly.
It's like the time. It's all about how much. All of this stuff takes way more time because it's way more detailed.
Yeah, it's not like the cost of your cabinets are, it's not as similar. It wouldn't be comparable to putting like a $300 knob on a set of Home Depot cabinets where it's like, okay, the cabinets cost nothing. And now all of it's all like on my jobs. It could be, if it were a 60,000 or say a $40,000 bathroom, $50,000 bathroom, it's not like somebody spending 10,000 on finish versus $15,000 on finishes are going to be driving the cost of that job. Like right. Most of that's labor and right. Our time and our prep and our planning and our subcontractors and all of that. And you can save money on kind of downgrading your finishes and pinching pennies there, but like you're not going to extremely like lower the cost of that job by doing so. And even like that kitchen, it's not like every single door has that hardware.
Right.
So in the grand scheme of things, if that cabinet job costs so much, like $600 difference isn't going to make or break it.
And that's kind of how we started developing these non-negotiables, or these items that we, we're always going to implement on our projects. On our trash unit, we always put a servo drive. So if your hands are full, you bump the trash unit. There's an electric arm that pushes that trash unit out for you. It's like $500, and it's a cake. It's easy to put in. It adapts right with the trash unit we use, and it was one of those things where no one requested it ever.
Mm-hmm.
I just said, let's just make that standard. Let's just do that. And it was rolled into our design. We started implementing it, and people appreciate it. It's like, if you asked me if I wanted it, I probably would have said yes, but I'm glad it's just there.
Yeah.
It wasn't, it's not a, how much is it? Then maybe we'll consider it. It's, it makes sense. It's a product that makes that kitchen better.
And I think that we have a job coming up where the budget, like for the amount of work, and they're spending a lot of money, but we started having to kind of circle back on finishes and adjust finishes and make some different selections. And the bummer for me is that, like, if we were to shave 15 grand off the entire contract of the job, which would be like 10% or so, that 15 grand was going to make this job like be from a pretty standard job that's like well executed to something that's special.
Right.
And the fact that my customers, because of budget, have the the ability and really the freedom, because at this point I want to make this job happen for them, to make those decisions. It's kind of tough for me, because I'm looking at it like, just spend the extra 15 grand and now it's going to be super special,
right,
versus cutting all of the cool details out of the job to get a well executed, clean.
So how are you having that conversation? How are you going back and saying that you should be spending that much more money?
With this one, I didn't really have a choice to have that conversation. It was like long story, we gave them a napkin budget with no design in place. There was an architect's scaled dimensions of their existing space and kind of what they wanted to do, but it was a floor plan. There was nothing. And I went and I gave them a napkin budget, and I think I came in at like 125 for the amount of work. And then we changed things, like from what I kind of bid on paper with having nothing for that napkin budget, and developed a spreadsheet. We changed scope. Like, we did some structural work. We realized that with the HVAC that's getting moved to the attic, we'd have to pull all the cellulose in the attic. We're moving a header, putting a flush beam in. We realized that now, like, because it's a really old house, to get all of this plumbing out and then add a bathroom, we're going to have to open up down into their basement, which like makes sense, you know, like why wouldn't you? But looking at it quickly on paper, I'm like not really in my head thinking, well, yeah, we're going to have to remodel their dining room and we're going to have to open up part of their finished basement, and really comprehending and quantifying the amount that's going to go into that. So we added all that, and then we backed out the HVAC work because they had already had a contract in place with somebody before we got there that we didn't realize, which kind of started this entire project for them. And they were like, well, if we're going to be opening up to get stuff, and so when we all said and done, our number was around like 150. And I was super pumped because I'm like, yo, I was so close to have nothing, no details, no finishes. We went through the entire design process. We finished, picked all of our fixture selections, really with just like, hey, when they come in to pick this stuff, pick something mid-range. I don't want junk in there. They can splurge on a few things, but don't go crazy. Nothing like the whole job can't be super high end, and kind of integrated some neat, classy details. Nothing crazy. It's an old house. And I was like, yes, I'm within 25,000, and we added work. Sure, we backed out the HVAC, but like we're still in that ballpark, right? And I get a hold of her like, hey, did you guys get the actual like budget for this? And she was appalled that I was that far off. Like, how are we so far off? I don't think I can afford you. We can't do this job. We're going to have to put a hold on it, like freaking out. So at this point, I'm like, this is on the schedule, this job. You know, there's already a design contract for, I think, $5,000 at this point. Like, I paid Amy however much to be working with them and doing this. Like, the amount of time that I put into these customers and meetings and everything else, like that $5,000 was not covering my costs at this point. You know, I was not breaking even. And then the schedule would have been an issue too. So I was almost scrambling to just make this budget work for them and get them the space. But I just wasn't going to eat my profit up to do this job.
Right.
Because I've done that, and I know I'm going to get in there, and I know I'm going to overbuild this job, and I'm going to be doing stuff for free. And I sat down with them. I said, we can reduce the level of finishes. We can pull out some things that like are extras, but there are some things like I'm not going to pull out reframing your ceiling. Like, I'm not going to pull out the amount of time that we have to fix all your walls because we're gutting plaster walls. Right. And like, I'm not going to put drywall. Well, we don't really care if they're flat. And I'm like considering, well, maybe, and then I'm just like, no, because then that's going to affect my trim. That's going to affect my doors. Like, I just can't. So I stood my ground with stuff for me that, like, if somebody were to walk in, my level of execution will still be something that I have zero regrets about. And it's just going to be like a level of finish type of thing. But at the same time, I wish I could just be like, yo, spend $15,000 more, and it's going to go from like a 75 to 100, you know? But with this, it wasn't working on this job, but I would have loved to have that conversation.
Yeah, it's tough because, you know, we've had a couple similar situations. One recently was basically an entire house renovation. And when they approached us, I tend to be the one that gets optimistic because something's cool looking. And this was a situation like that. It was really cool looking. And we had got the budget for it. We did a rough napkin estimate. We were like double. And, you know, like, it's significant, you know, like close to the $1 million mark. And my Molly was like, so we can't do this job. I said, no, let's figure out how to do it for what they want.
Yeah.
And she said the same thing. She's like, okay, so we're just going to rip all the cool stuff out of it, like the whole reason that you want to do this job. And long story short, we were able to value engineer a lot, and we got it down still over their max, but we explained kind of like what they were losing at that point. And and it was still in a range where we were super interested in doing it. It was still really cool. It was like a small modern house, really cool design, and, you know, still can get excited for it. But it was still, I think it was like $8,000 still over their budget. So we had met with them. I walked them through the proposal, and at this point, I was, we've done everything we could. I don't think we're gonna be able to proceed with this job. And about a week later, I got the best email that I think we could have got for this job, and it was they were putting the project on hold until they were able to afford it.
Yeah.
And Molly was like, called and was like, oh, that kind of stinks. I'm like, it doesn't. I'm like, that means that they value what we, what we brought to the table. They understand what we were proposing, and understood that anything lower than that, any additional savings, they were going to be losing everything that they've poured into the design.
For sure.
But that's not always the case. It's it's the same thing. If we're putting together a budget and we're going to be over budget, we're going to give them the $100,000 option, and then we're going to keep budgeting until we get the all-in option. So maybe it's 100 to 125. Maybe that 25 is within reach, and then they get everything they want, like you said, a 75 to 100. But sometimes that's not the case. It's like our max is 100, and it's figuring out it stinks because when you start removing all of the romantic side of it, all the things that you fell in love with the job, it becomes a totally different job.
Yeah, because then it's just paying for stuff. Like,
right. It's
that job's a paycheck.
Right. And that's why I asked how you have that conversation, because it's we've been in that position. I feel like everyone's been in that position where you value engineer a job down so far that it's just not a cool job anymore.
Which I agree, and I think that there is a time and a place for that conversation. And there's little things that I did to kind of ease the burden, even like cabinet finishing. They were looking at pulling the color match white to a stock white on the cabinets to save $1,000 on, if it were $10,000 for the cabinets, like a 10% upcharge or whatever. And I was just like, that's like list upcharge. I just told him, I was like, I'll just color match them for free, because it's just going to make the difference where it matches the trim, and like it's the color blue on the vanity that you want. Like, I'm not willing to that's dollar savings for me. I'd rather just like eat that and the cost of the job.
Yeah.
So, I did some things like that. There were a few details that we kept and were able to integrate that I know I'm kind of eating. But I also think that, like, at the end of the day, if the job gets photographed or if somebody walks through it, I want those things there. And like, that's my marketing fee, as you say.
Right. It's tough. It's because, I feel like in this industry, we get in this position like you are with this client a lot, where you give them everything that they want. You deliver what they're hoping to get out of this project in this early stage, and then it's too much money, and we feel obligated to make it work. Like, schedule aside, all of that, we have this. And I was talking to a guy this morning, another local contractor, and he was in this position and where he was trying to make it work. The budget didn't work. He explained over and over that, like, it just the money didn't work, and it got to a point where he felt emotionally responsible to get it done.
Yeah.
So he got it done. Didn't make any money on it, and it ended up being value engineered so far down that now there's issues.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I said to him, I've been in that position. We've been in that position, and it's hard because I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but you start doing stuff at cost. It's like you don't have money in there if something goes wrong.
Exactly.
And that's frightening. Like, the fact that you feel now responsible to get this done for them because you know how badly they want it and want it to be done, but you're doing it at the expense of yourself. Yourself, and then like your reputation. Right.
you're so one thing for me is like I've always tried to have this mindset once I got past that initial kind of breaking into business that I won't do anything that compromises the integrity of my business or my
But
reputation.
I think a lot of people will, even though they don't want to.
Yeah, for
And I
sure.
think
But
this
like,
is the position he was in.
how are you gonna do that? Like, it's okay to eat some money here or there, or pull a little money out, or maybe reduce like your margins. I'm not telling everyone to do that. And like, ideally, I would never do that. But there's jobs that I think that like for whatever reason you have to, or you do, or you feel that emotional,
Responsibility.
like responsibility and necessity to do that. And I think that you have to draw the line somewhere. And like we should just be drawing the line at, hey, that's my price. I'm not going to budge from that. That's for this job. It's not a la carte, whatever you want to say. But that's just not always the case. Everyone knows that. And there's whether it's schedule reasons, whether you need the work, whether you don't have something lined up, whether it's, you like the family, there's a plethora of reasons why you decide to do that. But if there's no other point that for which you draw that line, it has to be drawn at the part where you're now putting yourself at risk financially and like the longevity and the future of your business. Because like you said, you could be putting in a product that's inferior, and it's every job is as weak as your weakest link. Like it's only as good as the weakest link there.
So you're everyone that's listening is saying, yeah, we know, like that makes sense. What about the guy that's in that position right now, that cut the maybe cut scope or cut the quality of something or did something for free, and now he's at the end of the job and the project didn't end up, the client's not happy? Like, what is that? Like, what? How do you recover from that?
I I I would like to say that you do everything that you can to make that right, to protect yourself from that customer, from what could kind of fall on your shoulders. Make that as right as you can, and then I think moving forward, you need to have some sort, if you're entering, which you should be entering into contracts for these jobs, there needs to be, even it's an additional clause in your contract that like protects you from stuff like this, where it's like, hey, this customer wants to use this type of flooring and I could see this potentially being an issue. Or you know what, they want to put MDF trim everywhere. Mm-hmm. And they have kids, and a lot of it's like these detailed corners that are going to get banged up and chewed up. And I don't like, you need to put that in your contract. That's okay. If you want to use less expensive fixtures because I need this work to pay my bills and I can't walk from this job, like that's going to be in my contract, that my warranty is 60 days, or my warranty is like, we'll cover the fixture that we bought, but we're only going to cover replacing that fixture if it's an issue with our installation, not with the fixture itself.
Right. And again, I think that's the, I guess I'm trying to speak for this guy that I spoke with. It's like, that all makes sense for future and looking back on it and like what we could have fixed. But in the position now, your point of doing everything that you can to make it right, that's still so like, who drives that boat?
I think that you need to do as much as you can to protect yourself from whether it's a lawsuit, mm-hmm. whether it's poor word of mouth. I think that you need to get through it. If these issues are not something that you created, rather something because they were cost driven from a customer, I think that you need to do what you need to do to kind of walk away from that with things being okay. I don't think you need to go out of pocket anymore, but you also need to protect yourself from not getting in some sort of litigation or lawsuit because of this, because now it's just worse at that point, because now you have all of those fees. And I mean, it's a case by case basis, and it's every customer is different. There's some of those I would never want to be in that situation with. And there's some customers in that situation that I think would be very fair and understanding.
Yeah.
I feel like we had a conversation about this on a prior podcast where it's like, work out an agreement and sign something that you'll come back to this in a year, when you can get back on your feet.
Yeah, I talked about that last week at the Geldwin booth, and I told two different stories. It's, and I think I've told this story before on here, but we had that kitchen that we subbed out.
Yeah.
It was a smaller project. So for those that don't know the story, we took on a smaller kitchen renovation last year, and the client hired us. Wanted to, at this time we were fabricating all of our own cabinetry, but we made I shouldn't say that. I made the decision to try to partner with a smaller cabinet shop to and then manage our expectations kind of from afar for them to deliver a product that we were looking for, to see if we could ultimately expand our bandwidth as cabinet makers. So when we got busy, we had other guys that could produce the same level of quality. Long story short, it didn't work out in our favor. There was a handful of, I would say, a short list of issues that were just like straight up wrong, but a bigger list of things that just didn't hit our standard. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, the client was upset, and we sat. I was on site with him. I said, "Listen, I mean it, and I will always mean it. That if we're not happy with this, then we will replace this." And we did. We ended up ripping out the entire kitchen, building a new kitchen in our shop, and reinstalling it. But I tell that story, and and so many people have given backlash on obviously you could afford to do it, or I could never afford to do that. And the truth is, up until Geldwin, I never did the math on how much that cost. Mm-hmm. Never knew what that cost me. And I was like, I'm going to be speaking about this. I should probably have some, numbers, more for the reaction. And it was $45,000. And we didn't make nearly that, anywhere close to that on the project. So that was a direct, in the red, straight out of our pocket.
Yeah.
So that's not money that we just had kicking around like, hey, we can, that's not a problem. We'll do it. Never mind the time. But so going back to that, everyone, that the understanding that we had the money, it wasn't. We made the promise that we would fix it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the next day. We planned it months out. We planned it around a vacation that they were going to be taking. So over the course of the next few months, we basically trickled in, this kitchen that we knew that we were going to be replacing. And we made it work. And it's the same situation. It's, in a position like this, it's, you have to, if this is going to be what you're selling, you're going to be selling a value and, doing the right thing. When you're in a situation like this, making the promise that, maybe I can't afford to do it right now, but when I can, I will. Mm-hmm. I think you were there when I told the pergola story.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about it since I left there, and I'm like, I have to take a ride by there. If it's still up, I have to knock.
Is it up?
I don't know. I haven't had the opportunity to.
So I mean, there's also a difference between.
So let me. Real quick. That was something on me where it wasn't the client that value
driving that decision.
Right. The client didn't say, "Hey, see if you can hire another cabinet maker."
Or see if you can save a few dollars by hiring another cabinet company.
Right, and that and I don't want to confuse that because that's very different. Where he's in a position where it wasn't his decision.
Exactly.
And I feel like a lot of people get in that position where, as you are, it's like they're driving different, like they're ripping out scope, they're ripping out finishes. That bigger project that we were talking about, they reduced some of the cool factors on that house, and it gets to a point where it's when do you say no, and when do you say this is no longer a good project for us?
Well, yeah, it's like it's almost if somebody were trying to reduce cost and I were to have caved in and said, you know what, like this job, it's my next job that we're starting. You know what? I'm going to pull out the labor that we have to flatten the ceiling and flatten the walls and square everything up.
You
And
would
I'll
have done it for free.
Well, no, but like say that I didn't. Like I was like, you know what? Like you want to lose, like then fine, I'll pull that and I'll flatten the walls where my tile's going. And like if I have a cabinet to the ceiling, like we'll address that area or we'll float it out or whatever. But the rest of the walls and the ceiling, like we'll gut and then we'll fur out to pack out our studs to basically compensate on the window jams where we went from drywall to plaster. But I'm not going to flatten anything. You know, I'll just put lath on like the face of the studs or quarter inch and we'll put it up. And then I got done that and they hated that their walls weren't flat and that they were wavy. And then they wanted me to redo it. You know, like what do I do in that situation? Where if I didn't have that in my contract and now that, you know, I didn't properly explain to them why, then like, are they going to take me to the cleaner because of that? Like, you know, that's a decision that you made. Right. I shouldn't be held, you know, and if I properly articulated that and that were spelled out clearly in my contract, like you cannot, that's not on me at that point. And I'm not going to go out of business to try and fix that. Like, hey, maybe if there's some problem areas that you're super unhappy with, let's maybe try and address them. But I'm not going to redo that whole job because you made a decision to cut costs and pull that out when I didn't want to do that. And that's why it's kind of a non-negotiable for me, right? Where it's like, I'm not going to cut that budget out of there because I'm not going to have that conversation 3 months from now. I just won't. And like, well, our house is old. Your house is old, but you're completely gutting this entire space. So your house isn't going to be old anymore. You know, it's all going to be new. I can't keep the character of your old house when we're replacing all the trim, all right. The doors. You know, it just wouldn't make sense at that point. It would clash.
Right.
So that's why, you know, I would try and protect myself from that. And if it were that case, you know, I mean, I'm dealing with a customer now. It's a great customer. I love them. I work for them forever. But a fixture that we put in their kitchen that's one of those touch fixtures, seriously, in 2 years, I've already replaced the fixture 3 times and for all different issues.
Right.
One, like the cartridge didn't seal and leak. One, the colored ring that told you what color the water was stopped working. Now it just doesn't turn on and off. So I've been over there. Like at this point, I'm not calling my plumber to go over there anymore. I'm going over there and replacing the fixture, replacing the parts. I went over there last week and put a temporary hose with a shutoff from the cold water to the sink because I was like, I'm not going to pull this fixture again until a new one comes in and like put a fake one. And then like the part gets delayed and then it's like 2 weeks where they're like, hey, we have a hose hanging into our sink so we can have water. But like that wasn't their decision or anything. But had it been like, had we had a nicer fixture set up and then they went for like a Home Depot brand, which this isn't the case. It's a nice, well-known brand. There's just issues with this fixture, but like, I wouldn't want to eat that cost of going over there right. 3-4 times. Like I'm already pissed that I have to, like even at my plumbing vendor that like, what am I supposed if I were paying a plumber to do that and he had to install this 3 times and like go to the job 3-4 times, problem shoot.
Yeah.
I mean, it would cost me a lot of money at this point. And that's my responsibility.
Right. It's tough. I think, you know, I think it's important to know that, you know, number one, when it's not your job, understanding that and being able to walk away. But number two, the clear definition of what you're responsible for when a client is starting to deviate from your standard practice. I mean, yeah. I think that if you have the ability to walk at that point, you do. It's like, this isn't my job.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that, again, you have to just protect yourself in whatever way that is, whether that's protecting yourself from the future, whether that's protecting yourself from finding that. specific situation in the now. If that's protecting you from bad reviews, you need to make sure that your butt is covered and that your customers, you're making that right to whatever your capacity is, that you feel like you did the right thing. And, there's a right and there's a wrong, and you know what it is. If you're shorting somebody, it's not the right thing. If you did what you feel like you were obligated to do and what the mutual decision was, then like you should be fine walking away from it at that point.
Right.
I had other questions that were.
I have a question for you.
Okay, because I was going to say I'm not asking any on me, so you can ask me your question, and then we'll maybe touch on your other question, just because I feel like, as always, we're like deeper into this than I thought we would be on each question.
An hour 30 into it. We're just babbling.
I was like, Rach, I'll be quick. It's just me and Nick. It'll be like an hour.
If you're not following Tyler on Instagram, you wouldn't know this, but he brings his dog to work every day. I used to bring Gus to work every day, and you're making me miss that. But I feel bad for leaving him in the truck sometimes, which is funny because that's literally his favorite place in the world.
Same with my dog.
So what's up? Why, because you didn't bring your last dog to work.
No, so like
Shammy.
Yeah, so we had a lab before the new lab, Polly. So our last lab was kind of an adopted lab from our internal family. He was a dog that my dad decided to get, and we had a boxer at that point. And then like my parents split up, and my dad's new wife ended up having dogs. So the dogs were like, my dad was splitting time between his house and his new wife's house, and the dogs were kind of like didn't really have a home, and sometimes were left and just like let out and fed. And so Rachel and I adopted those dogs and took them full time while we were both still in college. And then like at one point we were in her studio apartment with a boxer and a lab. Fast forward a few years, Tyson, our boxer, had died, and we had the lab. Tyson was around for Selby, and then Tilly never knew Tyson. So it was just like the lab, Tilly, Selby for the past 3.5 years. And the dog was always like, we loved the dog, but once we had kids, he seemed like a nuisance to me. And he had habits from when he was a puppy that just were a pain in the butt. He wasn't the most social dog. Like, he was fine with people, but he almost was indifferent, if there was another dog. So he never really came to work with me, anything like that. He had his place at home. But I feel like probably a lot of myself in the time that I didn't spend with him, like he didn't feel like my dog. So when he died, which was probably 6 months ago. Oh no, sorry. Longer than that. I guess about a year ago. I was like, I had this weird itch to get another dog, but I was telling my wife, I'm so happy that we're going to be dogless. We haven't been dogless since we were in college. It's been 10 years now. I'm excited to not have a dog. And then weeks without having a dog, I'm like, it's weird to come home and not have a dog. It's, I'm walking over him at night and he's not there. You think that you hear him. It was just very weird to not have a dog. So I was like, I want to get another dog. And I wanted a yellow lab. I wanted a girl, and Rachel wanted a black lab. And so happened that like people at her work have labs from the same breeder. I also wanted to get a well-bred lab. We kind of like rescued, so to speak, both of like one was a full adoption into my family, and then I feel like we adopted him, but I'd never gotten a dog myself. And I wanted a well-bred dog. I wanted to get it from, it was being a puppy. I didn't want to have like health issues down the road and not know what I was getting. So that was a decision that I made. My wife works with somebody who has 2 labs from the same breeder and like loved them. She's like, they're an amazing disposition. They're so cute. Like, they're calm, they're nice, they're gentle. They get along with other dogs. They're great with anyone who walks in. So I was like, all right, find out the breeder. And she finds out the breeder somewhat hesitantly. And then they only had yellows. All the girls were yellow. So we were like, well, let's go look at them. And basically, like, you don't go look at a yellow lab puppy and not leave with one. Like, that's impossible.
I think that's almost dogs in general. Same thing with Gus. We were like, let's just drive to Connecticut and see if we like him. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to drive to Connecticut and not come home with him.
Exactly. And like, we have the girls now too. So like, yeah, I'm going to put my daughters in a pen with two fluffy little, whatever they are, 10-week-old, 8-week-old yellow labs, and be like, all right, we're going to get back in. We'll think about it. Or maybe we'll wait for the next litter. So they all wanted one dog and I wanted the other dog because I thought she was going to be bigger. And I just wanted, like, I didn't want a tiny little lab, which Polly is tiny. She's 8 months now and she's probably 40 pounds. She's just really, really small. And I joke that the other one's probably like a monster now. So Rachel worked for Anthropology. She was allowed to bring their pets to work. She switched jobs internally within the same company, moved to the office across the street. She's now with Urban, and she always brought Polly to work. When Polly was a puppy, she brought our last dog to work. She brought Tyson to work when he was still around, and she brought Polly to work. And that was always the understanding that Rach can bring dogs to work. She's going to bring Polly to work. Then she switches jobs, and there's a lady in her same little area. I mean, everyone has dogs there, but she has a puppy too that sits right next to Rachel. So she's bringing Polly, and it's just like a total crap show because Polly won't calm down. She loves other dogs. And Rachel's like, I can't bring her to work anymore. She just like, I can't do anything all day long. And so it started with me like, well, I'll bring her. I'll see how it goes. She still wasn't potty trained or anything like that. So we didn't want to leave her home all day. So I started bringing her on that bathroom. It was summertime. So I kind of like shuffled her between the sun outside and a pen, and then bring her crate. And then I would tie her up some days. And it got to the point where she was just coming with me every day. And then, you know, I'm getting her to work. I'm walking her. I'm having to leave the job a couple times a day to take her for a walk, to check on her, to make sure she stops barking. And it was a hassle at first, like packing her stuff up. She's a puppy. She needs to eat midday. And I'm like, what the heck did I get myself into? But then it started, like, I always joke with Rachel that she's my emotional support dog, because like it gets to the point where she's taking care of herself, but she's with me all the time. Like when I drive to work, she's next to me. When I drive home from work, she's next to me. When I'm on the job, like I'll leave her in the back of my truck with a heated like dog bed that's plugged in. And I'll leave the pass-through open because it's a cutaway, and she'll be on her front seat because that's just where she would prefer to be.
Yeah.
So when it's real cold, she's up front until it warms up, and then like I'll plug her bed in outside, or even the job that we're on now, like we're on a porch that's outside the house that's tiled that we're doing, so she'll hang out in there. Our customers started loving her. At this point, it's like I let her out when I get to work. She goes out at lunch, and then she is off at the end of the day. She's pretty well trained off leash at this point. So if I'm like running outside, she can just hang around with me, and she's not as much work anymore. But as crazy as it sounds, like anyone who's on the job with her, or anybody who, like my customers or myself, she makes so happy. Like she loves people. She loves other dogs. And the customer I'm working for now, like never liked dogs, never, ever. And her and her son are bringing toys for Polly and bringing bones and treats for her. And like, if I didn't bring her the one day because she got fixed, and they were super bummed. And I'm like, now if she weren't there, it'd be really weird, because she's been around for so long that it's like, I expect her to hop in the truck with me when I go to work.
Right.
And there is if I have to go to work on Saturday, Polly's going to come with me. And it's like I have somebody by my side that every day. It's not like I'm getting in my truck and driving to work by myself every day now. And it's crazy because I wouldn't, I have 2 daughters, and I probably now have more pictures of my dog on my phone than my daughters. But like every day at work, there was a while between my last employee and my new employee that I didn't have anyone working for me, and she's hanging out with me all day long. So no matter what I'm doing, no matter where I'm going, I'm not alone anymore. And stupid stuff where I'm like pissed off or frustrated. And then I walk outside and she's just like stupid happy. And I'm like, I can't even really be that mad right now. She's just like so happy to see me.
Right.
Even last night, Tilly asked if I could go into her sister's room to grab the water because the light was out. And I was like, ask Polly, she'll go with you. You'll have somebody who, no matter how tired she is, will get up and go with you. And like, it's that part of having a dog that I completely forgot about with my other dogs because I had kids and became preoccupied with them. And I'm back to the place now where it's like, no matter what happens during my day, no matter how much of a pain in the butt things are, there's a few times a day that I have to go out and I have to walk her and I have to let her off and I have to spend time with her that like snaps me out of whatever's going on and just like simplifies my life. And I have to be like, give the dog positive reinforcement. She does stuff. She like responds to commands, which make me super happy. And it's like, I don't know if I can not bring her to work anymore.
Right.
Like I'm seriously fitting the inside of my truck out to make sure that she'll be comfortable in the winter. And I'm like thinking, what am I going to do in the summer to like make sure that she's cool in there and everything else, which I don't need that on my plate right now, but it actually has like, everyone is so much happier and such better spirits when she's on the job. And it sounds like it's a load of crap.
No,
but
you're
like
selling it.
It's the truth. So that's why she's here.
It makes me want to bring Gus back to work. Cause like it would be the same thing. It's like he's got that stupid face all the time, and it's like you just look over and you smile.
Yeah. So like I'm cutting tile outside today. How many times am I going outside to cut a tile where she's there, where it's like I'll stop for 5 seconds to go over and get down on a knee and just like give her some affection. And then she's just in love at that point. And I'm like, I just needed that mental break that I couldn't snap myself out of.
Sure.
And she's like perpetually doing that. And it's the same thing, like I said, with my customers. My brother works for me. A different brother is with me now full time. And he's like, he loves having the dog on the job. And it keeps him in good spirits, where something could be going wrong. And then he walks outside and like calls the dog some dumb name and starts laughing that he always does. Or at lunch, it's like throwing a ball to a dog, which she's enforced and I guess kind of reaffirmed a lot of very simple, basic principles in life that I had lost touch with because I was so preoccupied and focused on other things or things that were such a pain in the butt. Like, hey, people learn better with positive reinforcement than they do by always putting them down or like constantly reprimanding them. Dumb stuff like that, or it's like consistency. Anything I want in my life, it has to be consistent. It's the same thing with the dog. Simple joys that I get from her, or just like how much a smile or acknowledging somebody could make them happy. Like she does that for me. I could do that for her. It's the same thing with people where I'm like, it almost took me back a little bit and simplified my life that I'm now putting these things into effect in my life, and it's making me a much happier person on a daily basis, like constantly.
I mean, that's worth it right there.
Yeah. And I didn't think like it all just kind of happened because she realistically, had Rachel not switched jobs, would never come to work for me.
Right.
So she went from like being a family dog to being my dog. Wherever I go now, she comes with me. My other dogs did that for a while. Once we had kids, it pissed me off. I was like, come on. I just want to poop alone. You know, there's not a kid busting down the door right now. Like, why are both of the dogs in here with me?
Right.
And I just lost focus on a lot of that stuff. And I do have a lot of regrets with the way that like my relationship with my old dog kind of progressed and probably dissipated between having children and the business and the stresses of life. And it's funny how all of that kind of came back full circle, and I'm right back to where I was like with a dog pre-kids, even though I have kids now.
Well, it's restarted. You're starting over from a puppy.
Yep.
It's funny. You mentioned that your client that didn't like dogs ended up like really liking her. When it was just me as a carpenter, I was working for another general contractor as a sub, and it was in the wintertime, and I had asked, I'm like, do you mind if I bring my dog to work? Like, the house is, not gutted, but like under construction.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, no problem. Like, and I had said, I remember knowing that the client didn't like dogs.
Yeah.
And he was like, it's not a big deal. She's not there. Like, the house is under construction. And he just hung out outside. And it was cold, but it was fine. And towards the end of the day, I was like, I'm going to work late. So I brought him inside. And now it's dark out. And I'm doing trim, and all of a sudden, Gus starts freaking out, barking, charging the door. Who's here? The lady that owns the house. She walks in, freaked out. I'm like, I'm wicked sorry. He said I could bring my dog to work. I just brought him inside because it's cold out. Wouldn't say a word to me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to pack up. So I pack up all my tools, I put everything in the truck. I'm driving home. I get a text. Hey, what happened? I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, she stopped by. He's like, we just got fired from that job.
Oh, are you serious?
And I was like, and so he calls me. I'm like, I swear, like, Gus barked, but we packed up. I didn't know she was going to be there. He's kind of like laughing at this point. And he's like, I think she's just messing with us. And no, we seriously got fired.
Are you serious?
And come to find out, it had nothing to do. Like, the straw was, the dog, having Gus was there was like the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
Like, there was so much other stuff that was happening behind the scenes that I wasn't aware of.
Yeah.
But it just was like, and this guy told him that he could bring a dog in a house that I'm allergic to dogs. All right, fired. And I was like, all right, cool. Can I go back there to get the rest of my stuff?
Yeah.
And nope.
Without the dog?
Couldn't. Everything stayed.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I know.
Yeah, so like my customer now, she doesn't like have a disdain for dogs, but her husband was like, she doesn't like dogs. And she's like sending me videos of dogs now. She's like, this one looks like Polly. Like, there's like a yellow lab that runs and jumps into a leaf pile.
Oh, yeah. I've seen that
and
one. She's
like sending me that. She's like, yeah, we just watch this as a whole family. And like, she'll bring her friends over. And she's like, can we see Polly? I mean, she's 45 years old. Like, her seriously like came home one day with a bone for her, and then her son's giving her toys like every day. So it's been she's had a very positive impact in my life. Even before I go to bed every night, I go outside and I walk her, and everything's pitch black around our house, but I'll go outside and spend like 15, 20 minutes, maybe a half hour walking her in the cold. And it's just like a really nice way for me to wind down my day.
Yeah.
Which I don't normally do. And I would never do that before. And I've never done that before. And it's gotten to be a really nice routine that's grounded me some and just brought a ton of joy into my life. And until I have a customer or a reason that she can't come to the job, she'll be coming to work with me.
That's cool, man.
So that's it. That's the reason.
I like it. You bought a dump trailer.
Yeah, I bought a dump trailer.
Why did you buy a dump trailer?
Oh, I've always, I felt like I wanted a dump trailer for a long time. I just didn't feel like spending the money on one. I didn't know how to get register with the DEP to dump it. And over the past couple of years, I don't do enough work that it's like I want to keep a dumpster at my shop all the time.
Yeah.
I just don't generate that much trash for our jobs. So I think that there's a time and a place for me to get dumpsters, but basically most companies want to start pulling their dumpsters either after 10 days or 2 weeks. And I don't do enough business with these companies. I'm not a big enough name with them that they'll like waive that fee. I guess I could call and try and work deals with them, but I'm kind of in this weird spot where I don't do enough work that I need a dumpster all the time, but I do need them on some jobs. My biggest issue is that I need something for waste generated between demo and completion of jobs. So like the beginning of a job, there's always bulk trash, which like dumpster makes sense. But then once I get that dumpster pulled, whether it's a 15 or 20 yard dumpster, what do I do for the rest of the job? I can't keep a dumpster for longer than 10 days. I did find a company to let it stay the whole job, but then I'm paying a premium. And like a 15-yard dumpster can cost me $700 by the time the job's over, between material hauling, pickup, and weight. And then I still am not solving that issue of generating trash between demo and completion of jobs. So now have a dumpster for 10 days, say it's a kitchen. They pull the dumpster. Now what do I do from framing stage until the end of that job?
Right.
Small stuff gets bagged. It's always in a trash can, gets bagged. I can throw that at the curb. What about the bigger stuff? What about like drywall, tile, paint, floor protection, boxes, stuff? Like, what am I doing with all of that throughout the course of the job? So if I don't have a dumpster, I'm bringing it home and then it's going into one of my like buildings out back. There's stuff where jobs where like I won't initially intend to have that much demo, and then we run into a floor that's like 6 inches deep where I'm like, oh, it's last year it's a 4x5 foyer. Like I could put that in 3 bags and be done with it. It wound up being like 8 inches thick of concrete and like cinder and dry pack and tile. And I'm like, this just went from like being a 3-bag job to literally I could use a dumpster right now.
Right.
So there's those situations, but mostly I'm pulling trash from jobs, bringing them until I either get a dumpster, I get enough to get a dumpster on my property, which then I'll trash it, or until I get another dumpster where I'm then bringing it back and throwing it at the dumpster. So I'm like, I just got so tired of doing that, that I bit the bullet and bought a dump trailer. And now money that would normally be going towards paying for a dumpster, I still have to pay for weight, is going towards the payment on the trailer. And then I also have something for waste in between jobs. So it's parked next to my shop. So when I come home, trash goes in the trailer once and I'm done with it. I'm not moving it. I'm not paying somebody to moving it. I'm not storing it somewhere and then when it fills up, there's a place that is 10-minute drive for me that's open 5 days a week and half a day on Saturdays that I can dump and just pay $100 a ton or whatever it is.
Yeah. I mean, especially for like a sole owner or like, a 1-2-man show, it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Because you're always coming back to the same location. You can dump the trash. If it sits on the job site for the duration, it's fine. It's yours.
Yep.
We use dumpsters where we can, and in the city, we're paying a company to come pick it up.
Yeah.
And that is not cheap.
No.
Where it's like, ultimately, I could get a dump trailer, and then or myself or one of the guys could be grabbing the dump trailer and doing a trash run, and it would cost less money. But it's for us, it's always about time in the city.
Yeah.
It's like, get this. We're carting this stuff out live.
Yep.
So it's not like we can stage it. It's, carts are going to come down to the side of the street and we're going to empty trash into it as quickly as possible. So,
yeah. I think I was always on the fence, and like everyone, you want to get paid for being on the job. You don't want to be paid to be dumping. like making trash runs and everything else. But like for the convenience for where it is and for the cost, even if it were a break even for me financially, which eventually, you know, this will pay for itself. But if it were a break even, the convenience of now having something on parked behind my shop that nobody can see, that's not an eyesore, that I can come home, back my truck up to and unload garbage. It's not on the job. You know, if I have a small job, it's pulling it up and then it's out of the customer's property the same day.
Right.
A lot of our workspaces are tight. It's in small neighborhoods. You can't park overnight. You need a permit with the township police department to keep a dumpster. This is just going to make my life so much easier. And like, I had a couple of people help me through the DEP process, turned around like stickers for it within 2 weeks, and it's $100 a year. So
yeah,
it just golden. It makes so much sense, and it's just going to simplify my life a few hours a week of not like move. My whole life, I feel like since I've been in business, trash has been one of my biggest issues.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of jobs don't need a dumpster.
Dude, I can't tell you how many times I've loaded my pickup with trash from a job, and we don't have a dumpster there, and I drive it back to the shop.
Yeah.
And then I get here and the dumpster's full.
But it's like so many of my jobs are enough that it's more than a couple bags, but it's not enough to have a dumpster.
Right.
And like this will fill that need.
Yeah. That's
all day long.
We use like that 1-800-GOT-JUNK.
Mm-hmm.
They're actually I was actually really surprised with them. They're great. They come out, like, especially in the city.
Yeah.
They'll come in, take the carts, shuttle them down, dump it in the truck, and they're out of there.
Yeah.
And Tom,
but it's got to be expensive, right?
It's no more expensive than us calling one of our demo guys.
Okay.
I think I want to say it might be cheaper, or maybe we figured it was cheaper because they were doing the lugging.
Exactly.
It wasn't as expensive as I thought it'd be.
Yeah.
And it was, the nice thing is being that there's so many of them,
mm-hmm.
you could schedule. It's like, you know what, we need trash out of here in 2 hours.
That's crazy.
It was, yeah, and I'm seeing the statements and I'm like, who's using 1-800-GOT-JUNK and for what?
Yeah.
And Tom, when he was with us, he was like, dude, I gave him a call to test them out, and they are fast, they're efficient, they're nice, they're clean, and the pricing was cheaper.
Yeah, I would never even think of that.
I know. I'm thinking like they do whole house cleanouts. Like, no,
mm-hmm.
we'll do trash pickup. And
I guess.
And there's guys, like, especially in the city, there's guys they'll charge per bag. So you're not even paying for the full truck. They'll just drive around and collect bags and then hit the dump.
That's crazy.
The city's a different animal, though. It's just whatever you can do to get the stuff out as efficiently and as fast as possible. It's crazy. Yes. We our Comm Ave job, they're a young mm-hmm. couple. They do their own trash.
Really?
Yeah. So her and husband and wife, they're like, on Sundays we come in and take all the trash. So just make sure they're in bags that we can lift.
Dude, I would love that.
Dude, I was like, are you sure? And they're like, no, it's like what we like to do on Sunday. And last week,
I got a few other jobs.
I was like, yeah, right. I didn't even, I know. But like last Sunday, last Friday, we finished all the wood flooring, and Pat texted me. He was like, hey, you might want to give them a heads up that we definitely need a trash pickup this week. And I see a picture, and it's just like, I don't even know how many bags of trash. They were lined up in front of the elevator, and they're on like the 5th floor, so it's all elevator. And I text them like, "Hey, just to let you know, everything's bagged up already." And they're like, "Great, we'll see it. We'll grab it on Sunday." I'm like, "You guys are amazing."
That's awesome.
It's funny. Megan, myself, and the kids were walking. We happened to walk that way in the city one day, and we're walking towards a park. And I think to myself, I'm like, I wonder if they're picking up the trash right now.
Yeah.
Sure enough, we come around the corner and they pull out their old like diesel GMC like 1980s pickup truck. I'm like, there they are. And she's like, who is that? I'm like, the clients. They pick up the trash every Sunday.
That's so weird.
It's so funny. It's awesome. But I was like, hey, it works for
us. Are they
us.
older?
No, they're like our age.
Are they? That's crazy.
Yeah.
I feel like nobody wants to do that. Why would you want to do that?
It's just they're so excited about the project, so I think it's like their opportunity to check in and save some money.
Yeah.
Because he I think he's got maybe a disposal business or something.
Yeah.
So he's like, yeah, I'll take care of it.
That's cool. Yeah, so the trailer's a 7x14. I got 2-foot side extensions that are removable, and it's like a 14K GVWR. So basically, it's a 15-yard dumpster.
That's perfect size.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's like 90% of the jobs that I do. That's the size dumpster I'd get. So
I mean, that makes sense.
A nice addition.
I always thought about getting one, but it's just like I can't. I'm the only one that's gonna tow the thing around. It's like,
yeah,
I can't do that.
No, you have bigger fish to fry, not me. Yeah, that's a good one for me. I could use it for my property and everything else too. So,
dude, we're 2 hours in.
I know. I feel like maybe we should wrap.
I think so.
And we'll keep. I'll keep my other questions. I think I only have one more. So that's.
You want to ask it?
Let's save it.
All right, we'll save it.
Yeah, I feel like you're falling asleep.
I'm not falling asleep. I'm just looking down because I'm not at my normal mic and table. And Ken left a donut on the table, and I've been being better about my eating.
Yeah. And
I keep looking at it, and I keep thinking I'm gonna eat it, and then I'm like, if I eat it, he's gonna come in tomorrow and be like, "Yeah, he ate it."
Yeah.
So I'm gonna leave it right there. No, but what'd you think of IBS last week?
It was good. I think that we accomplished what we wanted to as far as not being super busy and being able to kind of establish some relationships. I think even with the speeches, the presentations that we had,
they were fun.
And yeah, I think that with the presentations, the podcasts, that we slowed down enough that we could put more focus on those fewer people. And I think it's the same thing as everything that we do in business. It's quality over quantity. And I'm excited about that because moving forward, I think that we can establish some relationships and some customers and partners with the podcast that kind of have that same mindset that we do, and we can put a little more effort into them rather than signing people that we wouldn't necessarily sign with.
Right. I mean, between that, I will say I personally disagree a little bit with the busyness. I felt as though I was extremely busy.
You had more to do than me.
But with that being said, you stayed longer. So yeah. I say it every year, and this year I booked a flight for Friday and then switched it to Thursday. And when I got on that plane Thursday, I'm like, why did I do this? Yeah. I didn't have any opportunity to like decompress. Mm-hmm. All I wanted to do was get a massage after.
I didn't do anything Thursday. I didn't even make it down to the show by the time like I got up and I got some things done, and then I like ran and got food and then did some emails and then figured out my trip. And at that point it was like almost, I guess it was around 11 or so.
Yeah, I was back in the hotel room packing to get to the plane.
Yeah, at that point I wasn't going to head down to the show for a couple of hours and then get hung up with all that stuff. So I just hung. I caught a late dinner with Mike Telich from Telich Custom Homes, I believe is the name of his company. I don't know. I just know him as Mike, down in Baton Rouge. I got a late dinner from them, which he treated me to. So thanks, Mike, if you are listening. Which was good because I wouldn't have had that opportunity. And I feel like I almost bailed on it too. And he texted me like, hey, let's grab dinner. And it was 9:45 reservation, which is 12:45 Eastern Standard Time. And I'm like at a steakhouse. And I'm like, oh, dude, that's so late. I'm really on the fence about this. And then as I type that, I'm basically like, you know what? I don't have an opportunity to sit down to Mike and have a conversation with Mike or like one-on-one with Mike, anything else. And I'm like about to respond, yeah, I'm in. And then he's like, I'll treat. And like, as I'll treat comes in, my text message is going out that I'm in. And I was like, dude, that totally looks like I made my decision based on you saying that you were going to treat. Like, but I really do want to come. So it was nice. I like Mike. He's kind of rude, kind of inappropriate, very detail oriented, very intelligent. So probably very similar to me.
Right.
So I get along with him well. I feel like a lot of people probably feel like he comes off as could be a jerk, which is probably very similar to me. So I definitely, we're on the same wavelength.
I think one of my biggest takeaways from the entire show, and to Breck's event, that was a huge turnout.
Yeah.
And an hour after it was over, people were still hanging out. But my takeaway from that was that the industry continues to shift towards positivity, and collaboration, which is amazing because I feel like we've made huge strides in that manner, where everything was competitive, and there was a lot of negativity, around, where it's every year it just gets a little bit, nicer and nicer and more positive and more collaborative, and everyone is there to learn and connect with people. And that's so cool.
I definitely enjoyed the crowd this year more than last year. I think that there was a lot of the numbers last year as far as people within like the little circle that we're in. I think that there was a lot of people, but I think that it wasn't as good of a core group of people. And for those people who weren't there this year, it's not anyone in particular. I just felt like everyone who was there this year, a lot of that initial thrill has worn off, and a lot of people you've already met before. And it's not like, I'm going to come out to the show and meet you for the first time. So it was a lot of familiar faces and people who wanted to be there for the sake of being there.
Right.
Which I think was a good thing. I did enjoy this year probably the most that I have in a year. And it's every year that kind of sequentially every year I feel like has the potential to get a little bit worse because you're burnt from it.
Right.
But I did enjoy this year a lot.
Yeah, same. So big thanks to everyone that had us at their booths and were able to connect with us, the events, the dinners.
Fine Home Building.
Yeah, that was a great, they sold that place out too.
No, that was so every year Fine Home Building has an event that they donate the proceeds to a couple of organizations, and obviously cover their costs and everything else. But it's a ton of really nice people, a lot of the familiar faces, and there's just like tremendous support for the industry.
I'm excited to see what they do this year. I feel like they're starting to really shape up and put some good things together.
Yeah, I'm pulling for them. And I mean, I always appreciate working with Justin over there, Justin Fink. You guys, I'm sure know. But I'm interested to see where they go, and I'm definitely willing to take that ride with them. And I hope everyone else is. I think that at the end of the day, that they have big picture in mind.
For sure.
And the greater good in mind, and kind of pulling for everyone. And obviously there's a business there to support, but I think that there's a lot more to that organization. That event is kind of proof of that.
Absolutely. All right, dude, let's wrap up.
Let's do it.
You can find us on themoderncraftsman.org, info at themoderncraftsman. Make sure you guys are sharing this, rating it, leaving us a review on iTunes. We appreciate the feedback. The Modern Craftsman Mondays, the reshares on Instagram, all of the above. But the biggest thing is we appreciate the support and the willingness to continue to learn and give us feedback. So
yeah, for sure. This has been a fun ride. I think we should also maybe Dylan at Upstate Merch hooked us up with the hats for IBS, the Modern Craftsman hats. I don't know a lot of people asked about them. I think that what we need to do is get them printed and like sell them somewhere and proceeds above and beyond everyone's cost for them to something, because a lot of people want them.
Agreed. Yeah, I think I know to double what you said, a lot of people have reached out to see if they could buy one or get one. So I think talking to Dylan. So yeah, big shout out to him. Big thank you to him. He continues to support the Modern Craftsman, as well as I know a lot of you guys with your merch. But I think we should get on the hook with him and get these reprinted and get them available to people.